Today on the Bar Business Podcast, discover the hidden $50,000 cost where you're probably tracking the wrong metric. Learn why your top bartender may be indeed your biggest liability, and master the three signals that someone is quitting weeks before they leave. Hello, and welcome to the Bar Business Podcast, where we help bar owners increase profits, attract loyal guests, and simplify operations so you can avoid burnout and finally enjoy your life outside of your bar. I'm your host, Chris Schneider, the Bar Business Coach. The Bar Business Podcast is brought to you by QuickSpec. And full disclosure, I'm a co-founder. We built QuickSpec to give you back your time and help you work smarter, not harder. QuickSpec connects your POS data, layers in real-world context, and gives you actionable forecasts and KPI dashboards that allow you to make data-driven decisions so you can spend less time guessing and more time on what matters. Staff smarter, order better. Stop planning for rushes that never show up or getting caught off guard by the ones that do. When you make decisions based upon real data, not guesswork, you get your time back and your team runs smoothly. Check it out at quickspec.com. That's QUIXSPEC.com. And make sure to sign up for our early access program on the homepage. So today we're going to talk about labor. And often when we talk about labor on this podcast, we're talking about it from the financial sense, the dollars and cents. But here's the reality. You can run a 20% labor cost, and that makes no difference if your team's planning to walk out, if you have toxic people working for you. 20% is great on the financial metrics. But unless you have people working for you that are happy, that do their jobs well, that are well-trained, that aren't planning to leave, that 20% labor cost doesn't mean much, does it? And frequently, when we look at financial metrics, we focus way more on hitting that metric than we do what does optimizing for that metric potentially cause on the back end. So today we're going to talk all about that. Why your labor cost percentage means nothing if people are planning to walk out. How to spot toxic high performance before they cause issues for your bar. And what are the leading indicators that we can look at that predict turnover before they happen? But before I jump into that, if you have not had a chance to check it out, I had a new book that came out this month. It's called Menus That Sell. It's all about how to plan, design, execute, and optimize your menu. Check it out. It's a really good read, and it is probably the only book of its kind, or at least the only one I can find, on the market about menus, not just the design, not just the financial optimization, but really walking you through end-to-end what to do with your menu. Now, to get back to the topic today, we're talking about labor turnover. And one of the things that I think is really important when we talk about labor turnover is measuring whether or not our employees are happy, right? Labor costs can be great, but turnover is going to spike that labor cost way up. We've talked about this before, but in most cases, replacing a bartender, replacing a server, replacing a line employee in your kitchen is going to cost you somewhere around $5,000. Now, if we're talking about one of your managers, I've seen arguments that you could just add a zero to that and say it's about 50. I don't think it costs that much to replace a bar manager, but it's not $5,000, it's probably closer to 10. So we want to minimize turnover. Now, one of the ways that we can do that is actually understanding how does our team feel? And when we talk about measuring guest satisfaction, what do we always go to? NPS, Net Promoter Score. It's simple, it's clean, it's statistically valuable. When it comes to our employees, we can come up with a manager Net Promoter Score. Now, this probably sounds like something crazy. Why am I going to have my employees rate my managers? How do I do all this math? We'll go through that real quick. But this is something I can tell you that a lot of large companies do. I know when I was working at Intuit and we were, giant software company, we did this every quarter. My team would fill out a manager Net Promoter Score. Now, for me as the manager, yeah, did it give my boss some things to come down on me on? Of course. But it also gave me valuable feedback to understand better how my team sees me. Because it turns out, even though I was having one-on-ones every month, I'd sit there and I'd look at somebody and say, well, how are things going? They'd tell me one thing, but on a anonymous survey that I have no access to who filled out what, they would tell me a lot more. Oftentimes, the one-on-ones, I wouldn't get the negative feedback. On the surveys, I would. But that allowed me to learn from my team on I wasn't doing well, what I wasn't doing well, and to improve myself to better serve them. And I've said this before, but it bears repeating. How you treat your team is how you treat your guests. So the happier they are, the happier your guests are going to be. Now, what is a manager net promoter score? Well, it's a single predictive metric for retention and service quality. And what we're going to do is ask our team one simple question, just like we would ask our guests for an NPS score. But in this case, the question we're asking is, how likely are you to recommend working here to a friend in the industry? How likely are you to recommend working here to a friend in the industry? And we're going to ask them to rate that on a 1 to 9 scale, or 1 to 10 scale, I should say. 9s and 10s, those are our promoters. 7 and 8s, those are passive. 6 or below are detractors. Now, to calculate an NPS score, we do this the same way, whether we're talking a manager NPS score or a customer NPS score. We're going to take the percentage of promoters minus the percentage of the detractors. Those passives, those 7 and 8s, we just ignore them. What are we looking for here? Good is 30 or higher. 50 or higher is excellent. Below 0, you got some problems you need to work out. Now, I would follow this up just like I would for a customer NPS score when you're doing a manager NPS score with your team. Ask them for the number, then ask why. That why is where you're going to get a lot of information that is actionable that you can use to improve your team experience. Personally, I would do this quarterly. You could do this monthly, but I think quarterly is sufficient because especially if you're already doing monthly one-on-ones. The big thing is you can use Google Forms to do it, but make sure it's not saving their emails. Make sure it's anonymous. Make sure you really don't know who it is. Now, there's 2 reasons for that. One is, as I mentioned earlier, employees are going to feel better responding to a survey when they know that you cannot trace it back to them. 2, if you can trace it back to them, even if you convince them that it's anonymous, if you can't trace it back to them, we are all humans. Somebody says good things about you and really likes you, you're going to be nice for them. Somebody says shitty things about you and doesn't like you, you're going to be meaner to them. So it's just as much for you and your own bias if you know who wrote what, and for your employees and their protection that you want this to be completely anonymous. Do not do this during your formal annual review if you do one. Like end of year, if you're doing bonuses and stuff, this is not when we want to do that NPS score. You want to scatter this out throughout the year in times when there's not anything else going on with your employee structure, if you will. So not when we're doing end of year bonuses, not when we're talking about things like quarterly performance reviews or biannual performance reviews. We want to do this separate so we're getting a clean read outside of anything else going on. One thing to keep in mind here, 7 and 8s are fine, right? If somebody is neutral, so they're giving you a 7 or 8 on that question, you're good. A 9 or 10, now that is what we're really striving for, just like with an NPS score. The big thing here is to look at the whys you're given and see, is there any way that I can see in the data to move my 7s and 8s to 9s and 10s? It's the same process we would do if we were doing a guest NPS score. A few other things I want to get into real quick before I let you go today. One is toxic asset identification. So we always need to look for, we have great employees, but are they toxic? And one thing I hear a lot from bar owners, restaurant owners, I cannot lose this server. I can't afford to lose this bartender. I can't afford to lose this cook. And 9 times out of 10, when I hear that, that's actually a red flag. Because if you tell me you can't afford to lose somebody, a lot of times in reality, you can't afford to keep them. And why do I call these types of people toxic assets? Because they are pulling in your best numbers. They are great at sales. Your customers may like them, but they're not supporting your culture. Right? Maybe they're not doing the training. Maybe they're telling other people, well, I don't give a shit what Chris says the cocktail menu is. This is how I make this cocktail. That is hurting your brand. That is hurting your business. And I don't care how great they are with customers. I don't care how much your customers like them. On a side note, a loose correlation I always noticed in my own bar, when the customers liked the bartender too much, the bartender was probably giving out free drinks. So that's another side of this. But the bottom line is, you don't want to be held hostage by one of your employees ever. And these are the warning signs I look for to say, is this person a problem or not? Are there high turnover in people that work in their proximity? Whether it's people are quitting or they're just requesting schedule changes away from that person, that's a good sign we don't want them there. Are you spending a lot of time coaching that person? If they are, regardless of sales, they probably shouldn't be there. But most importantly, are you but most importantly, is that bartender, is that server, is that cook upholding your standards or undermining them? Because people that undermine your standards don't care about your culture. They want to come to work, do what they want, make their money. That's fine. But at least for me, you're not doing that at my bar. You're going to follow my standards, you're going to follow my rules, or you're not going to work there. Now, a lot of times, that person seems like it's a difficult fire. I will admit that sometimes when you fire that person, you will lose a little bit of business. That is a risk we take, right? Always in business, sometimes you have to cold the herd a little bit in order to get ahead. Now, generally speaking, though, you get rid of that person, you got a couple weeks of pain. Then you're going to see morale improve. You're going to see other employees decide they want to stay. You're going to see compounding good effects in your culture. One last thing I want to cover before I let you go today. What are some leading indicators to spot a walkout before it happens? And these are just kind of general, but if you notice any of these patterns in your employees, you need to check in with them. You need to decide whether or not you want to try to save that relationship or not. Sometimes you might just need to let them go quick. But here are my top indicators I look for. Increased call outs. If someone doesn't normally call out and then they start calling out, that's a good indication that they're burnt out or they're interviewing. Indicator 2, decreased engagement. If they used to joke around, contribute ideas, stay late, be friendly, and now they're not, they're just showing up, doing the minimum and leaving, they're not engaged. They're checked out. There's a reason for that. You can ask them about it. If someone used to be flexible and now they're not, that's my third indicator I look for. That I would call that schedule resistance. But if there's availability, if their flexibility changes, that's a good indicator that they're on their way out the door. Our fourth indicator, there are physical tells. So, are they spending more time on their phone? Are they less chatty with your regulars? Do they just appear checked out? Or is their side work not being done as well? All those sorts of things. And the fifth indicator, and this is the best indicator, is the whisper network. It is the gossip going on around your own bar. Most staff are going to know someone's leaving before you do. Why? Because they talk to them. They interact with them more. They're more observant than you are. Now, should that be the case? Probably not. But that is normally what I see going on. If you've built genuine relationships with the rest of your staff, they're probably going to give you a heads up. You can always ask, though. But make sure you're looking for those indicators. That way, before you have turnover, you can plan to fix it. So to wrap us up for today, measure that staff sentiment index. Measure your manager NPS score. Understand what that means. Adjust to your employees where you can to build that better culture. If you have toxic assets, cut them. Get rid of them. Don't allow people to work for you that are going to destroy your culture. And make sure you're watching those leading indicators so that you can prevent service issues, prevent staffing issues by hiring a new employee before your old employee quits. You put those three tools together, you're going to have a staff that gives you the base that you can start to optimize your labor percentage. But if you're optimizing labor percentage without considering these sorts of things, without considering your team, without considering your culture, you're probably doing the wrong thing first. That about wraps it up for today. If you enjoyed today's insights, make sure you like, subscribe, and leave a review. If you are ready to take your bar to the next level, schedule a strategy session with me by clicking the link in the show notes below. Until next time, have a great day, and we will talk again later.